High on the shoulders of the Himalaya, there are walls of ice and stone that almost no one survives. One of them rises out of the jungles of Nepal, the South Face of Annapurna, a wall so steep and unstable that climbers called it the impossible face. The other towers above the valleys of Pakistan, the Rupal face of Nanga Parbat, the highest vertical wall on Earth, more than 4 kilometers of unbroken danger. On these walls, legends were made, and lives were lost. In 1970, 2 climbers stood on the summit of Annapurna after a climb many believed couldn't be done. Days later, one of their closest friends lay buried under tons of collapsing ice. That same year, a young Reinhold Messner pushed up the Rupal face with his brother Günther, and only one of them came back alive. This isn't just about mountains, it's about ambition, fear, and the price people pay when they refuse to turn back. So, here's the question. If you were standing at the base of a wall taller than anything you'd ever seen, knowing that half of the people before you never returned, would you dare to climb it? These faces are not ordinary routes. They don't forgive mistakes. They don't let you hide. The South Face of Annapurna is a trap of avalanches and collapsing ice towers that can crush an entire team without warning. The Rupal face of Nanga Parbat is so big that even the strongest climbers admit it feels endless. Step after step, the wall just keeps rising. And yet, year after year, climbers keep coming back. Some chase glory, some chase redemption. Some simply want to stand where no human being has stood before. But behind every triumph lies a shadow. Behind every photograph of a smiling summit team, there's a story of someone who never made it home. Today we dive into those stories, into the triumphs that shocked the world, and the tragedies that broke it. And trust me, you won't look at a mountain the same way again. When most people think of mountains, they imagine snowy peaks in the distance, postcard landscapes, something peaceful. But the South Face of Annapurna and the Rupal face of Nanga Parbat are anything but peaceful. They are monstrous walls that loom like fortresses, daring anyone to come closer. The South Face of Annapurna is a wall of rock and ice nearly 3,000 meters high. For decades, no one even considered climbing it. Too dangerous, too unstable, too exposed. Then in 1970, Chris Bonington and his British team changed mountaineering forever by saying, "We won't look for the easiest way, we'll take the hardest." That decision would echo through climbing history. Meanwhile, across the border in Pakistan, another wall was waiting. The Rupal face of Nanga Parbat, 4,600 meters of sheer vertical rise from the valley floor. Imagine stacking 15 Eiffel Towers on top of each other. That's the scale of this face. It's not just a climb, it's an abyss flipped upside down. And that abyss has earned Nanga Parbat the nickname the Killer Mountain. But here's the question that hooks every climber who stares at these walls. Are they really impossible? Or are they just waiting for someone reckless or brilliant enough to try? To understand why these two faces are so feared, you have to picture what it feels like to stand beneath them. The walls are so massive they make you feel like an ant staring at a skyscraper. The air is thin even before you take your first step. The faces are littered with dangers you can't control. Avalanches that roar down like freight trains, rocks that whistle past your head faster than bullets, storms that sweep in without warning, and yet, climbers still come. Why? Because these faces are the ultimate test. If Everest is the tallest mountain in the world, Annapurna's South Face and Nanga Parbat's Rupal face are the deadliest classrooms. They teach lessons no book can prepare you for, about fear, about ambition, about what it really means to risk your life for a dream. As Hermann Buhl, the man who first climbed Nanga Parbat, once said, "Mountains aren't fair or unfair, they're just dangerous. Dangerous enough to kill the unprepared. Dangerous enough to scar even the strongest. But for some, dangerous enough to become an obsession. And that obsession would lead to one of the boldest, bloodiest expeditions in Himalayan history. But what happened next shocked the climbing world. In the spring of 1970, Chris Bonington gathered one of the strongest British climbing teams ever assembled. Their mission, to do what nobody had dared, to climb the South Face of Annapurna. At the time, only 3 of the world's 8,000-meter peaks had ever been climbed by more than one route. To attempt something so audacious wasn't just bold, it was almost reckless. The South Face looked like a frozen waterfall stretched across the sky, nearly vertical, plastered with unstable ice and threatened by towering seracs, massive ice cliffs that could collapse at any moment. Even from base camp, climbers could hear the groaning of the mountain. Every crack and rumble was a reminder that this wall didn't want them there. The team fought their way upward with siege tactics, fixing ropes, hauling tons of gear, and slowly carving a line through the most dangerous terrain imaginable. At night, avalanches thundered down. During the day, they clawed their way higher, step by step, knowing that one mistake meant certain death. But on May 27th, two climbers, Don Willens and Dougal Haston, finally reached the summit of Annapurna, 8,091 meters above sea level. No oxygen, no margin for error. It was a moment of triumph. Against the odds, they had stood on top of an impossible wall. The climbing world erupted with admiration. Headlines praised it as a new age of mountaineering. Annapurna South Face wasn't just a climb, it was a statement. The British had proved that even the wildest walls of the Himalaya could be conquered. But the mountain wasn't finished with them yet. Just 3 days later, on May 30th, the team was preparing to leave. Spirits were high, they had done the impossible. But then tragedy struck. Ian Clough, one of the most talented and beloved members of the expedition, was descending through the lower ice falls when disaster hit. Without warning, a massive serac collapsed. Tons of ice came crashing down the face. In seconds, Clough was gone, buried beneath the avalanche. For Bonington and the rest of the team, it was a gut punch. Victory and grief collided in the same week. They had made history, yes, but at a terrible cost. As Bonington later reflected, the mountain gave us triumph, and then it took Ian away. That duality, the glory and the tragedy, became the legacy of Annapurna's South Face. In years to come, other climbers would return, trying new lines, pushing lighter styles, but the risks never changed. In 1982, Alex McIntyre, one of the brightest stars of alpine climbing, was struck by a single falling stone. One instant, his life was over. The South Face remains a graveyard of ambition, a wall that demands everything from those who step onto it, and often far more than they can give. And yet, as the dust settled from Bonington's climb, another mountain was already casting its shadow. A wall even bigger, even deadlier, and destined to scar the history of climbing forever. The Rupal face of Nanga Parbat. If Annapurna's South Face was the impossible climb of the 1970s, Nanga Parbat's Rupal face was something else entirely. A monster. The tallest mountain wall on Earth. 4.6 kilometers of rock and ice stacked above the valley floor. To stand beneath it is to feel like you're staring at the side of a planet. In 1970, a young Reinhold Messner stood at the base of this wall with his brother Günther. They were part of a large German expedition, hundreds of porters, fixed ropes, all the hallmarks of the old siege style. But Reinhold wasn't interested in slow, methodical climbing. He wanted something purer, faster, more direct. Against orders, Reinhold pushed straight up the Rupal face, dragging his brother with him. For days they clawed their way higher, crossing ice gullies, traversing beneath seracs, fighting exhaustion and storms. Against all odds, they reached the summit. It was a historic first ascent. But celebration turned quickly to horror. Instead of descending the way they came, Reinhold insisted on a new way down, across the unclimbed Diamir face. Exhausted, frostbitten, and running out of strength, the brothers stumbled into disaster. Günther disappeared in the chaos of avalanches and exhaustion. Reinhold barely made it out alive. He would later write, "I never saw my brother again." Those words still echo as one of the most haunting lines in mountaineering history. The climbing world was stunned. Some called it bravery, others called it recklessness. And for decades, controversy raged. Had Reinhold abandoned his brother, or had Günther chosen his fate? It wasn't until 2005, when Günther's remains were found at the base of the Diamir face, that the truth was partially settled. But the scars of that climb remain. The Rupal face had claimed its first victim, and it would not be the last. Over the years, climbers kept returning to the Rupal face, drawn by its scale and reputation. Each attempt seemed to end the same way: storms, avalanches, frostbite, or death. The wall simply swallowed expeditions whole. In the 1980s and 90s, strong teams tried bold new lines, only to be beaten back. Even Reinhold Messner himself admitted the face was beyond the limits of what humans can endure. And then came 2004. Two climbers, Steve House and Bruce Miller, set out to climb a new, direct line up the Rupal face. No siege tactics, no big team. Just two men and a dream of the purest ascent possible. For 5 days they battled up the wall. Avalanches thundered nearby. Rocks whistled past their heads like frisbees of death. Their tent was perched on tiny ledges, exposed to everything the mountain could throw. Bruce later recalled, Alpinism is always messy. If I came down with only my bib soiled, I would consider myself lucky. That was his way of coping with the sheer terror of the climb. By 7,500 meters, House was dangerously ill, coughing blood, barely able to move. They turned back, defeated, but alive. Few climbers would even dare go that far. To this day, the Rupal Face remains one of the greatest unclimbed challenges in the Himalaya. Climbers dream of it, some obsess over it. But the truth is, most who try never even come close. Because this isn't just a wall, it's a judgment, a trial by nature itself. And it's one where the mountain almost always wins. Annapurna's South Face and Nanga Parbat's Rupal Face stand worlds apart, yet strangely connected. One is in Nepal, hidden deep within the Annapurna sanctuary. The other looms over Pakistan's Rupal Valley, visible for miles like a wall to the sky. But both share the same cruel nature. They lure climbers in with beauty and punish them with brutality. The South Face of Annapurna is a gambler's climb. You can do everything right. Train, prepare, climb, with skill, and still be crushed in an instant by collapsing ice. That's what happened to Ian Clough in 1970, and that's what happened to Alex McIntyre in 1982. On Annapurna, chance is often the deciding factor. The Rupal Face, in contrast, is a war of attrition. It's not just about bad luck, it's about enduring something so vast it feels endless. 4.5 kilometers of exposure, storms that pin you down for days, rockfall that never stops. Climbers often say it's less like climbing a mountain and more like fighting an ocean that never runs dry. If Annapurna's South Face is a deadly lottery, the Rupal Face is a marathon through hell. And yet, despite their differences, both faces became legendary proving grounds. For Bonington's British team, Annapurna's South Face was a declaration. We can climb the unclimbable. For Messner, the Rupal Face was a crucible that shaped his philosophy. Pure, fast, uncompromising. Both walls rewrote the rules of high-altitude mountaineering. They showed that the Himalaya wasn't just about reaching summits, it was about how you reached them, and what price you were willing to pay. But here's the truth. These walls don't care about style points or records or human ambition. They stand silent, indifferent, while climbers gamble with their lives. Some succeed, some vanish, and for the rest of us, we're left with stories that are equal parts inspiration and warning. So let me ask you, if you were standing at the foot of either face, knowing the odds, hearing the avalanches crash in the distance, would you take that first step, or would you turn back? Because for those who didn't, their names are now written into the history and the tragedies of the Himalaya. In the end, these two walls, Annapurna's South Face and Nanga Parbat's Rupal Face, stand as symbols of everything beautiful and terrifying about mountaineering. They are cathedrals of ice and stone, built on triumphs that shook the climbing world, and tragedies that still echo through it. Annapurna's South Face taught us that ambition comes with a price. The British team proved the impossible was possible, but Ian Clough's death reminded everyone that the mountain always takes its share. Later, Alex McIntyre's fall showed how fragile even the best can be when stone meets flesh. The Rupal Face of Nanga Parbat forged the legend of Reinhold Messner, but only through the loss of his brother. It pushed others like Steve House to their absolute limit, leaving scars, physical and emotional, that never fully heal. The wall remains a reminder that some challenges aren't just about skill, they're about survival. Both faces became more than routes. They became mirrors. They reflected back the deepest parts of those who dared, their courage, their ego, their hunger, their fear. And maybe that's why people keep going back, because in those frozen cathedrals, stripped bare by altitude and danger, there's no hiding who you really are. Reinhold Messner once said, "Mountains aren't stadiums where I satisfy my ambition to achieve. They are cathedrals where I practice my religion." For some, that religion ended in glory. For others, in silence. And for the rest of us, all we can do is look up at those impossible walls and wonder what we would do if it was us standing there.